Hollywood stars may seem larger than life, but of course they are just as vulnerable to life's tragedies, including the chance of dying at a young age. For some of these Hollywood stars who died so young, their celebrity was sometimes brief, sometimes felt for decades. What they had in common was a death that came too soon. But somehow, some way, they always come back. James Dean once said, "Dream as if you'll live forever. Live as if you'll die today." Rebel Without a Cause was a classic film detailing the sordid adventures of a youth struggling with identity and clashing generational attitudes, is widely regarded as one of the most significant movies in film history. 1 month before the release of Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean was killed in a head-on collision while driving his Porsche 550 Spyder, the same vehicle he drove while shooting Rebel. It was Dean's premature death that cast a shadow over the film, but it was the incredibly emotional and volatile behavior that occurred on set and the horrific death of the lead actor that many have blamed for the curse that followed. Co-star Sal Mineo and Natalie would also suffer the same fate, Sal being stabbed outside of his West Hollywood apartment, and the mysterious drowning death of Natalie Wood. The paranormal aftermath. Do these stars still come back to the sightings of where they have passed? We talk about this and much more on episode 18, The Casting Curse of Rebel Without a Cause. Actors take your places. Marker. Roll sound. Action.
I've been listening to a ton of true crime podcasts lately, but there's just not enough conspiracy theories in it.
What about international crime? But what about the psychological aspect? I mean, what were they thinking?
Yeah, but who's talking about cults and even paranormal stuff?
Hey, wait, that's us. It's Murder Blows. We're a podcast of 4 friends talking about the things we love the most. Join us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, anywhere that you get your podcasts every Monday morning.
And if you haven't gotten enough of us yet, we are on Twitter at Murder Blows and Instagram at Murder Blows Cast.
So come hang out with us or listen to us every Monday. Thanks so much. Bye.
Hey friends.
Hello.
Welcome back to another episode of Hollywood Paranormal. Yes. If you're new to Hollywood Paranormal, welcome. We are a Hollywood true crime and paranormal podcast.
Yes.
Where we talk about Hollywood true crime and its paranormal association and any type of California crime with a paranormal association in general.
Yes, we will talk about anything.
Mm-hmm. 2 teen girls chatting.
Oh, I brought my Vogue with me. It's great. Teen Vogue.
Well, before we go into this story, can we talk about this Mercury retrograde?
Girl. So we've talked about it. I am like the kind of person in general who's like, no, I don't really believe in astrology. I have a roommate who is very into it. She's done like my star chart, my birth chart. There's a woman at the gym who like every time she comes in, she's like, look up this thing. It's like a different like way to read your astrology. Mm-hmm. So I'm aware of it, but I don't really subscribe to it per se. I'm like, yeah, I know I'm a Gemini. I know like my sun sign, my moon sign, blah, blah, blah. And yet, for all my like protesting, I still can feel, like I felt the second my Saturn return happened, I was like, what's happening? Why is my life doing this? Like, what is going on? I like got off a plane and felt it. And I texted my roommate. I was like, something's not right. I don't know why. And she's like, what are you feeling? And I explained it. And she was like, it's your Saturn return. It's like, no. Girl,
blame it on the planet.
I bring all that up to say, yes, I don't necessarily believe in it, but damn, has this week been insane.
No, this whole month?
Yeah.
The last week of July when it was supposed to start.
Oh, God.
And then I was told, yeah, it's supposed to end on August the 18th. Okay, great. And then it picks back up supposedly in 2 weeks or in November. Yeah, I'm over it. I'm so glad that whoever took my credit card information and bought 3 bottles of Chanel is enjoying it. because I'm not.
No,
This is what happened.
That is terrible.
Oh yeah, it's been like with my finances. Like I remember buying something online and they charged my account 3 times.
Rude.
I found like I had to dispute that charge on my credit card because someone charged $500 worth of Chanel.
God.
And I don't know. It's just like people been going crazy. There have been a lot of car accidents.
Yes.
A lot of people some of my friends getting divorces.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane.
It is insane. Stay safe, y'all.
I'm going to read you this tweet by Veggie Delight. Congratulate yourself for making it through July, a month with 5 planets in retrograde, a blood moon eclipse, a Friday the 13th, and a curse sarcophagus.
Oh my God. Obsessed. Thank you. I appreciate your congratulations.
Congratulations.
That's hilarious.
I know.
We did it. We really did it.
We really did.
If you don't feel accomplished about anything else,
right,
know that you've survived.
What is our mantra? What is our mantra? If Britney Spears can survive 2007, we can survive this retrograde.
Yeah.
There you go.
The other one I saw, and this is a little bit older, is something along the lines of everyone like made fun of the people who thought that the world was ending in 2012, but has anyone felt alive since then? And I like sat at my computer, was just like, it's real. Like full on got me. I'm like, no, it's happening. So there we are. We're either surviving or as Techian ghosts. One or the other. It's fine.
I go with a Techian ghost.
Me too.
Yeah. Go creepy.
Yes.
Well, it seems like we're, wrapping it up pretty nicely, this retrograde, because we just had a beautiful brunch with some amazing doctors.
Yes.
Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh of LA Not So Confidential. But they're definitely one of our spiritual bays. Guys, they're LA forensic psychologists.
Mm-hmm.
They are legit. They know what they're talking about. They have a podcast. Like
they're
I mentioned,
everything we are not.
When we grow up, we want to be just like them when we grow up. And they are the sweetest people on the planet. We had brunch with them at Dupar's at the Grove.
Yes. We saw, just a full-on name drop. We saw Emma Roberts and Evan Peters.
Oh my God.
We were really living
our
true Hollywood life today.
It was a sign.
Yep.
Yeah. We finally arrived.
I only threw one pancake at them. I was very controlled. Good for me.
I know. Dr. Scott and I looked at each other. We're like, oh my God, that's her. I really don't like her.
I know.
I really don't. I've heard some.
Girl.
I've heard some things about her, and I know that I've had friends that worked on set with her, and she is no bueno. Nope.
She's a permanent Mercury retrograde. She's like our favorite listener. She's like, how could they attack me like this?
I know.
Sorry, girl.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, you heard it in our intro, guys. We are going to be talking about the casting curse of Rebel Without a Cause.
Yes.
If you tuned into our first season, we spoke about the casting curse of the Misfits that included Marilyn Monroe, Clark Gables, and Montgomery Clift.
Yes.
And how they all mysteriously passed away after the shooting of this film. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that history repeated itself.
Yes.
But it repeated itself before The Misfits because Rebel was shot in 1955.
Yes.
And barely a month after it was released, we had the passing of James Dean.
Yes.
So we'll get into that very, very soon. So you know how we're going to do. We're going to give you a little intro. And we're going to give you a little welcoming and a background of the 40s. What was going on during this time? How was Rebel introduced to the production people?
Yes.
How it was introduced to, the producers and writers, and how it was, pretty much shot. We're going to go over the tea that was spilled during filming, because there's a lot of tea that occurred in front of the camera, behind the camera, and in Nicholas Ray's Chateau Marmont bungalow.
Ugh, girl.
Of course, you know how that is. And then Bryce will take us to church on the deaths of James Dean, Nick Adams, Selma Mineo, and Natalie Wood. And you brought up a really good point during your research.
Yes.
And we'll go into that very soon. And then the moment that you all have been waiting for.
Ghosts.
Rebel Without a Cause, ghosts. Do these stars still come back? Because in Hollyweird, They seem to do that a lot. When they've passed under mysterious circumstances, they tend to come back to the places where they have passed.
Yes.
And we'll see that very, very soon. We'll actually hear about it. All right. So you ready, Bryce?
I'm ready.
All right. Where do we begin?
Without a cause. Okay,
That too.
I'll say myself out. It's fair.
Well, in order to begin, we need to go back. We need to go all the way back to the mid-40s. So let's go back to 1946, guys. Let's go back to 1946, where bikinis go on sale in Paris. And on December 31st of 1946, Harry Truman issues a presidential proclamation declaring an official end to World War II.
We did it.
We didn't. Baby boomers become a big thing, and people were going to the cinema like crazy. They were going out, they were celebrating. So you had production companies such as RKO, Fox, MGM, and Paramount producing films like Gilda, The Best Years of Our Lives, Blue Skies, Razor's Edge, Roads to Utopia, and The Postman Always Rings Twice. Here in LA, he just rings once and just like throws the package over the fence and leaves.
And
Bye.
then someone else comes and steals your package.
It pretty much. Thank you, Amazon. It was the era of post-war up until 1962. But it was during this time that Warner Brothers producer Jerry Wald just so happened to buy the rights to a racy novel labeled Rebel Without a Cause. The script was commissioned, and you're not going to believe who was one of the writers of the script. Theodore Giselle, better known as Dr. Seuss, was one of the writers.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah, he was a big writer in the industry. So a little known Marlon Brando turned up for the screen test and was attracted to the script instantly. Warner's chief talent scout, William Orr, recalled he just sat there tearing up an envelope into little pieces. We figured he must be a genius, so we signed him on the spot.
I love it.
But unfortunately, the script just sat there until director Nicholas Ray discovered it in 1954, which leads him to write his own treatment. And for some of you guys who are not film buffs, don't know what a treatment is a first draft of a screenplay for a motion picture, television program, or radio play. Treatments read like a short story, but are told in the present tense and describe events as they happen. Congratulations, you just went through the first lesson of film writing 101.
Yes.
Right there, guys. So prior to production, Nicholas Ray held interviews at his bungalow at the Chateau Marmont, and Natalie Wood wanted desperately to play the female teenage role of Judy, but Ray had told her she wasn't right for the part. She persisted and would hang around while he was casting other parts. There were even claims that they had an affair, and sources even recalled seeing her in and out of his bungalow every day and all hours of the night.
Girl.
I know, but no matter what she did, he still wouldn't cast her. Why? She was a squeaky clean figure, a square, a child star embarking into young adult stardom. She had too much of a goody two-shoe persona. Until one night, she went out drinking with her friends and pulled a Lindsay Lohan. They ended up, they ended up in a fender bender with a young Dennis Hopper on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. The media pounced on the story immediately. Natalie was taken to the hospital, and Ray rushed to her side on hearing the news. She looked up at Ray and said, "You know what the police called me? A juvenile delinquent. Do I get the part now?" Nicholas Ray acquiesced, and Natalie Wood got the part due to a fender bender. Yeah, girl. So Dean quickly followed up his role in Eden with starring as Jim Stark in Rebel, followed by Sal Mineo being casted the tragic Plato. Nick Adams played Chick, Dennis Hopper played Goon. James Dean, Natalie Wood, Nick Adams, and Sal Mineo were an inseparable foursome while filming Rebel Without a Cause. Now, friends, it's that time of the episode where we get to know these victims in this crazy Hollywood tale as people and not just victims. So we start with James Dean.
That old so-and-so.
That old so-and-so. You do not know who James Dean is, guys, which kind of worries us.
Sure.
Just an FYI, James Dean was born James Byron Dean on February 8th of 1931 in Marion, Indiana. He is remembered as a cultural icon of teenage disillusionment and social estrangement, as expressed in the title of his most celebrated film, Rebel Without a Cause, shot in 1955. The other two roles that defined his stardom were Loner Calstraxed in East of Eden, also shot in 55, and the Shirley Ranch Hand, Jet Rink and Giant, that was shot in 56. Dean passed on September 30th, 1955 at the age of 24 in a head-on collision while racing his Porsche 550 Spyder. We'll touch on that soon.
Oh, yes.
And Natalie Wood, born, I'm going to butcher this, guys, sorry, Natalia Nikolaevna Zokarenko.
That was great.
I added like the accent.
I love that.
Homegirl is half Russian, half American. So there you go. She is a fellow Cancer, born July 20th, 1938. She began her career as a film child star and became a successful Hollywood star as a young adult, receiving 3 Academy Award nominations before she turned 25. Her roles included Miracle on 34th Street, Splendor in the Grass, Rebel Without a Cause, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, The Searchers, and our favorite West Side Story. Mario.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
I know. I get goosebumps every time I watch it. Wood passed on November 29th, 1981 due to, and I say this with severe finger quotes, accidental drowning in Two Harbors, California. She was 43 years old. We'll touch on that very soon.
Yes.
Sal Mineo, born January 10th of 1939, was an American film and theater actor who is known for his performance as John Plato Crawford opposite James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. Mineo was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his roles in Rebel Without a Cause and 1960's Exodus, respectively. Now, in 1957, he tried to start a career as a rock and roll singer. He released 2 singles. The first was Start Movin' in My Direction and Lasting Love. He was murdered in front of his West Hollywood apartment on February 12th of 1976. He was 37 years old, and we'll touch on that extremely soon. And then finally, we have Nick Adams. Nick Adams, born July 10th, another fellow Cancer, 1931, was an American film and television actor and screenwriter. He was noted for his roles in several Hollywood films during the 50s and 60s, along with his starring role in the ABC TV series The Rebel in 1959. Decades after Adams' death from a prescription drug overdose, and I also say that with severe finger quotes.
Yes.
He passed at the tender age of 36. His widely publicized friendships with James Dean and Elvis Presley would stir speculation about both his private life and the circumstances of his death on February 7th, 1968. Adams initially may have met James Dean in December of 1950 while jitterbugging for a soft drink commercial filmed at Griffith Park. They became friends instantly during the filming, and they were casted together in the movie Rebel Without a Cause. During their breaks, Dean and Adams entertained cast and crew with improvisations of Marlon Brando and Ella Kazan, who had directed Dean in East of Eden. So they were both goofballs on the set. They were inseparable.
Yeah.
And even some people claimed that they had an affair. Which we'll touch on that soon.
Oh, yes, we will.
So this is the tea that occurred during filming. Realizing Dean's power to touch youthful audiences, director Nicholas Ray gave Dean free reign to improvise his scene, meaning he gave him free reign to be a method actor, 100%. So according to TMC.com, Anne Duran, who played Dean's mother in Rebel Without a Cause, said Jimmy did most of the directing. He gave us our lines. He dominated the entire thing. Dean and Ray's working relationship was equally bizarre. Ray often rehearsed with Dean at his Chateau Marmont bungalow and felt the energy between them there was so powerful that he actually recreated his own living room on the set to inspire Dean. This is how crazy it was, yes. But it seemed like Ray was instantly captivated by Dean from the very, very beginning. There was even reports that before he was 100% sure that he wanted Dean for this part, he followed Dean to New York and hung out with him for several weeks. Spent a night with him at his apartment, even went to parties with him together, smoked a little marijuana with him together, drank together. They did everything together. It was a very interesting relationship that they had. Anne Duran also revealed that Jimmy was a strange boy. On the first day, Jim Bacchus, who played James Dean's dad in Rebel, couldn't believe it. We were watching Jimmy doing his scene and someone had said, "Quiet, we're going to shoot now." and they got up speed and we were ready for action. Jimmy went down on the floor in the fetal position for the longest time. It seemed like half a can of film. And Nick said, action. Jimmy stood up and went into the scene. Jim and I had never seen this method of doing things.
Ugh.
Nick seemed to be mesmerized by Jimmy. He just gave him full reign. Method acting.
Girl, you know how I feel about the method. If it works for you, more power to you.
But this was the thing in the 50s because of Lee Strasberg. And we mentioned this with our Marilyn Monroe episodes, too, because she was under the direction of Lee Strasberg and under his education and guidance. And this is the same thing that happened with Marlon Brando and with James Dean. So this was the thing to do. But it seems like everyone and anyone who goes down this route of method acting just didn't seem to really live a full life, except for Daniel Day-Lewis.
I mean, this is a whole separate episode, but even him, I'm just like, we get it.
If I had $1 for every time you had an eye roll, I would buy 3 bottles of Chanel
right? You could afford it.
Chanel Mademoiselle.
Yeah, I mean, I think the argument is like there in the entire industry between like the method and taking it too far and whether or not it's the only way or the best way. I personally do not like it. For anyone that doesn't know, the method is the idea that if you are going to act as a role, that you must embody that role 24/7 and like live that role, in order to get like the most realistic. They wouldn't even call it a performance because it's more capturing the essence of that role in real life, making it as real as possible. So that if, you know, the classic example I always think about from Uta Hagen's first book is when she's talking about
respect for acting.
They would do, there was a dinner table scene that was happening off stage so that like the characters on stage are referencing that. Every night they would actually eat dinner off stage. There was like a full table set up.
Oh, wow.
Her and the Luntz would be eating dinner and the characters on stage would like hear them eating. They would like have actual dinner every night.
So you can hear the
stage.
actual clanking of the silverware, the plates, the glasses, everything.
So that's, I think, like sort of the prime example of the method is like, oh, that's really like kind of endearing and kind of touching, like they're having dinner together, like that's so sweet. The problem is that for every sweet dinner scene there's, you know, the Daniel Day-Lewis's, the Nicole Kidmans, the Sean Penns, who take it too far in my opinion, and who I really bristle against, like this sort of glorification of the disregard for safety that kind of goes hand in hand. So you see Nicole Kidman and she's talking about her performance in Big Little Lies, for example. And she's like, you know, he was really slamming me into the door. He was really hitting me. I was so primal. And it's like this weird, like, celebration of being physically abused. Like, or you could just try acting. Like, I don't know. Maybe you just like, and so fine, like I'm not Nicole Kidman. I don't have any Academy Awards. So like you can take my opinion with a grain of salt.
Right.
But for me, I definitely fall more on the side of like, as an actor, your job is to be the vessel for the story. And you have to do that in a way that makes it so that you're not ruining yourself. Heath Ledger, Nicole Kidman, all these people who then come out and they're like, I've been like psychologically traumatized, but it was like the best acting I've ever done. No, don't do that. Don't do that. So, sorry, that's a very long rant because I have a lot of opinions about the method.
No, I agree. 100% I agree. And little story time, like at our work, I think I mentioned this to you too. At our job, we have these summer intensive classes for film and TV. And a week before I left to go to New Orleans, I got a little scared. I almost called like security because there was this boy, this student who I've never seen before. So, you know, I'm assuming this was part of the film program. I started hearing him curse. And a lot of times the students are out in front of the in the hallway in front of the shop rehearsing because the camera classes are in those rooms right across
Right.
from the shop. So you always hear scenes going on. You can tell it's a scene because some of them are just acting for the first time.
Yes,
and
bless.
bless. And with this one gentleman, he took it to a major extreme. Like, I've never heard anything like that in my 5 years of working there, but I started hearing him curse, and I thought, oh my God, he's probably on a phone call or something, because he's like, F you, F this, fuck this, you know? And all of a sudden, I hear what sounds like someone kicking or punching a door
Oh, God.
really violently, to the point where me and like the props people in the other department down the hall, we all came out, and we were like slowly coming out of our rooms, and we're like, what's going on? He is out in the hallway punching a table, this foldable table that was on standby for, I guess, one of the meet and greets at the school. And he was punching it, and you know, the props director approaches him. I'm like, girl, you got some guts. And she's like, is there a problem? What's going on? He's like, no, I'm just getting ready for a scene.
Boo.
Can you not do that here? Can you go outside and do that, because this is like school property?
Yeah, stop damaging property for your
Exactly.
scene. Ugh.
No, I told him, like, can you not get ready for a scene here? There's people that are working. And he's like, whatever, and goes upstairs.
Ew.
I know. I'm like, ugh.
See,
No.
oof.
No.
Again,
It doesn't, no.
the method is not my preferred choice when it comes to scene work or for acting, so send me your hate mail. It's fine. I get that some people really like it, but
For some
that
people
is
it
the
works.
problem. It's really selfish.
It
And that's
really-
what
yeah.
it always comes down to me, is like, you can say that Daniel Day-Lewis is like the greatest actor of our lives, and blah, blah, blah,
But I
blah.
feel for some people, they can take that.
Sure,
And some people, it's very rare. Like Daniel Day-Lewis, yes, maybe.
he's just not my cup of tea either. I always think he's the same in everything, and it just comes across as selfish to me, but fine. Again, he has Academy Awards and I don't, so like maybe these grapes are sour. I don't know. Just in general, I think it lends itself to being selfish, and that you are only focused on yourself and what you, quote, need to get there.
Yeah.
And like any of those like phrases that you hear of like typical bad acting, like, I don't think my character would do that, or like what my
yeah.
character needs. Like,
Oh,
first of
trust
all,
me, I hear
fuck
that
off.
in the costume
all the time.
shop. Like, I don't think I would wear that. I'm like, I don't care what you think. I care what the director thinks and what's best for your
Right.
character, you know. Yeah.
So, you know, again, I get that I'm probably bringing a lot of bitter baggage to this situation, but I think most times the method lends itself to diva type behavior, and I have so little tolerance for that.
Right.
So all that to say, thanks James Dean for really kicking us off on the method.
Well, there is this one scene I was going to mention too, in which Jimmy batters a desk in Rebel. And he prepared for this scene by getting drunk in his trailer. And when he emerged from his trailer and he performed the shot, he did it in one take. He ended up breaking 2 bones in his hand as a result. So they had to cut shooting. They had to like wrap up his hand. They had to move on with other scenes. They had to like kind of fall out of sequence. So there we go.
And
Not
that's the
thinking
thing.
about everyone else and,
Yes.
you know, the sequence of shooting for that day.
And that's like hundreds of people's work schedule. So it's like, yeah, in some sense, he like saved the money by getting it in one take. Amazing. But how much did he cost them in insurance, in medical procedure, in rescheduling, in film scheduling? Like, it's all chaotic now. Like, because you got your moment, fine. Yeah. It's, again, I hear how I sound. Everyone's just going to be listening to this being like, God, he's so bitter. But it's just because I hate the method. Like, acting with Bryce, don't do the method.
If you're thinking about going into acting, guys, take it from Bryce.
Yeah.
Stay away from method.
This wildly successful actor.
Thank you for this TED Talk.
Thank you.
So towards the end of shooting, the only thing that remained in the eventual movie was the famous Chicky Run scene, where 2
Yes.
cars, lights out, race towards each other in the Sepulveda incline before crashing straight into each other as the cars approached the tunnel. Now, the scene was filmed in May of 1955 and involved locations in Calabasas and a cliff that was actually built on what is now Stage 16 at Warner Brothers Studio in Burbank. Though Ray had originated the Chicky Run, it was the screenwriter, Leon Uris, who moved it to the clifftop location and turned it into a dare scenario rather than a suicidal rupture. The result was a scene where James Dean's character in a dare with a rival named Buzz, and Dean escapes, but Buzz plunges with his car to his death. This was a very, very famous scene, especially for film history. This scene also inspired a lot of teenagers during this time period to recreate it all on their own. So after this movie came out, a lot of teens got into very serious accidents trying to recreate a Chicky run.
Girl.
And this is something that mirrors with the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Well, we're all such lemmings. Really bitter in this episode, apparently. I think it's any like viral sensation. Like right now, everyone is doing that Drake music video in their cars, and that's like a slow speed thing, and yet people are still like crashing their cars, or like they get on an incline, and all of a sudden their car's like rolling away from them, or they like
the car's running over their foot.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like we continue to do these things, like ooh, like they did it in movies. Like that's not how movie magic works. Like don't do it in real life. But here we are.
Weave a basket.
Yeah.
I don't know. Go to a clay workshop.
In general, light crafting is always the answer. Yes.
Meditate. But that's. I mean, it's what's happening right now with the Fast and Furious franchise.
100%.
I remember when the first one came out, when I was living in Spring, in Texas, I remember a bunch of my friends and acquaintances would try to soup up their Hondas, their Toyotas.
No.
And there's this one road, it was called Rincon Road, where they would start doing these races. And people got into some serious accidents because they're not race car drivers. They don't know how to control a car. They don't know how to shift. They don't know the dangers of like speed racing, and here it is all over again, happening again. And I posted that one picture.
Yes.
And we'll go into that soon about, James Dean and Paul Walker. We'll go into that later.
Girl.
So here are rumors. Let's go into the rumors of Nicholas Ray, because there's a lot of tea with this guy. A lot of tea. So Ray had cast James Dean, Natalie Woods, and Sal Mineo in the lead roles, and incidentally almost certainly slept with all of them. This was a rumor. So it was true that him and Wood had an affair. It is true. However, there were rumors that circulated that he also slept with Sal Mineo and James Dean. He denied these rumors in Patrick McGilligan's book, Nicholas Ray, The Glorious Failure of an American Director. And McGilligan writes that Ray's gay subtext in Rebel Without a Cause flew under the radar of censors, but didn't go unnoticed by gay men. Ray encouraged the romantic chemistry between Sal and James. Ray never denied he himself slept with men, even if he saw that as different from being homosexual. Now, during the making of his film Bigger Than Life, a daring vehicle for James Mason, Ray stated he had an affair with the 33-year-old British journalist Gavin Lambert, who was one of the first international critics to champion Ray as a major auteur. So there were those rumors too, that him and Dean and Mineo had this unusual connection.
Well, I think a lot of people credit Sal Mineo with being the first portrayal of a gay person on film, even though it's not expressly.
No.
There's a lot of, because of how censorship was, because of, how much power the studios had, it really had to be very subversive and like very stylized. But I think the subtext and what he was being directed to do was that he was in the midst of unrequited love with the James Dean character. And because of that, he's sort of credited with this, like, even though it's not outright, or he couldn't have ever acted on it, or they couldn't have even portrayed it in the 50s. He is the first gay male character on film, in essence, which I think is really cool.
And he was one of the first pioneers to come out eventually and say, no, I'm gay and this is who I am, even though it was a career killer. Suicide.
100%.
I mean, kudos to him, because he was like, I don't give a shit. This is who I am. Like, I'm not going to follow through with what these, industry people are directing me to do. Like, I'm done with it. And good for him. But there are also rumors, too, that Sal Mineo and James Dean had an affair during shooting. And according to our favorite peeps over at Dead in Hollywood Zine, Mineo shot down those rumors later in life, stating during an interview, if I had understood back then that a guy could be in love with another one, it would have happened, but I didn't come to that realization for a few more years, and then it was too late for Jimmy and me.
Oh no, my heart.
Yeah, like hold my purse, hold my lashes. I'm going to cry right now. Like, yeah, that was such a sweet response.
That makes my heart hurt.
There are a lot of speculations too that James Dean was bisexual, that James Dean was heterosexual, that James Dean was pansexual. I mean, we discussed this before too. I mean, in my opinion, I don't think he was. I felt like for him it didn't matter. It was all about connection and maybe not preference. That's just my opinion.
Sure.
I felt like he had this connection, maybe with like the strong connection with Mineo, with Ray, with Adams. Adams and him were also rumored to have an affair. You know, there's also rumors that, oh yeah, he had an affair with Natalie Wood. He had an affair with Elizabeth Taylor while shooting Giant. He had an affair with Marilyn Monroe. He had an affair with Vampira. I mean, there was all these like stories going around.
Well, it's hard when someone ceases to be a human and becomes like this weird legend, especially like the
That's such a good way of putting it.
You know what I mean? Like these Marilyn Monroe's and James Dean and all of these people who it's like we impart so much of our own experience onto them because they had so much life left to live. And so it's like, well, realistically, I probably fall in the camp that I think he was probably, if not, you know, right, we're so good at labeling things now, but if he wasn't actually bisexual, then I think you're right. Like he probably just connected to humans, regardless of their gender.
Yeah.
I think it just happened that they happened to be both genders.
Yeah.
But labels aside, that's not the point. I think part of that is as a gay man, I want that to be true. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think it's very easy when these people die so young and they're such big celebrities that they become these like icons that we can then like imbue with our own desires for them,
right?
Or like, well, this is like what would have happened, or like this is how it would have been or was. Like that might be true. I think it probably was. But who can say? Obviously,
who can say? That's true.
He died so young.
He did, and yeah. So I mean, what if he did? And what if he didn't?
Yeah.
But to me, he yearned for connection, and this is what I learned too. I read this really good book. It's by Elizabeth Dizzy Sheridan. It's called Jimmy and Me.
Oh, yeah.
And I highly recommend that, I mean, you read this book because she knew James as Jimmy.
Yeah.
Way before he got big with Giant and East of Eden. So in this book, she writes about how it was like to live and love one of the most controversial performing artists in American history. And her book clearly states that he truly adored her and that he was capable of being monogamous. He, you know, she mentions this in this book too, that a lot of people thought James Dean was like living on the edge. He was this rebel. He was really a goofball.
Yeah.
Like he really didn't take himself seriously. And she also mentions in this book too that they had lived and been in this very serious relationship with one another for 2 years, living in New York. She was an aspiring dancer. He was an aspiring artist. And he was a calmer and more stable person during that time living with her in New York City. But there are times too where he was very erratic. Like he had severe mood swings. He also had temper tantrums. And she even goes into detail about his mom, because he loses his mom at the age of 9. And he was so connected with his mother, very connected, which a lot of people connect that with him being kind of obsessed with the whole idea of death. He really didn't process her death well. And I know that he was born in Indiana and then moved with his parents to Santa Monica because of his dad's work. And then there is where his mom died at the age of 9. I think she died of cancer. And then he was shipped back to Indiana to live with his aunt and uncle, but never had a good relationship with his father since then. But his heart ached for the loss of his mom.
Yeah.
Within Elizabeth Sheridan, within Dizzy, he found like this maternal figure in her, which is why they had such a close connection. And after he left New York, they broke up. They were still in constant communication. They would write to each other every week. And I mean, like, it just was a unique coupling of like souls, in my opinion, after reading this book. And the ending left me in tears because she learns how to go on without him after the fatal crash. And it's quite poignant because she talks about it. She was like, yeah, it's like, you know, today we have like these cell phones and these text messages, and you know, back then we just wrote to each other. We always look forward to it. I always look forward to hearing from Jimmy. And ever since those letters stopped, like a part of me almost stopped too, which I found so sad.
Yeah.
But in an interview that I watched,
that's so sweet.
I think it was like a couple of years ago with her, she even claims like, I feel like at times I get visited by him. Like I just feel him around me.
Whoa.
Because they were that connected.
Yeah.
They were still good friends. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. I highly recommend reading that book. It was so, at times I had to put it down.
Yeah.
Because it was sad.
Aww.
And then, guys, it's that moment of our episode where we hit tragedy.
Yeah.
So,
good.
Great. Mineo, Dean, Wood, and Adams would all die under suspicious circumstances. Dean would die before the movie was released. He also starred in Giant with Elizabeth Taylor, another film completed but not released before his life would be taken in a car crash. Nick Adams' voice was used for dubbing Dean's in post-production. Following Dean's passing would be Adams, then Mineo, and finally Wood would be the last to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have all the info on their deaths.
Yes, let's talk about death.
Yes, let's talk about their deaths in chronological order because you did bring up a really eerie
so that was
point.
one of the things that like freaked me out the most. It's not the only thing that freaked me out, but one of the weirdest parts is that all four of them, it was one death per decade, which I don't know why freaks me out so much. So we had James Dean in the 50s, Nick Adams died in the 60s, Sal Mineo died in the 70s, and then Natalie Wood died in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And the main thing that freaks me out about that is that there are a lot of rumors and speculation about, as we are titling this, the curse of this film.
Yeah.
And anytime there's a repeating kind of pattern, and, you know, it's not like 10 years to the day or anything super creepy like that, but it's just enough that you're like, oh, is this cursed? Like, why is that so specific? It just gives me like a chill when I think about it. Like, oh, one every decade is super creepy.
It is.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either.
Go away, casting curse. So obviously, James Dean was the first to die. As you said, he died on September 30th in 1955, which was right before, almost a month exactly before the film was even released. So he, you know, I think it's so tragic because the movie the production studio like used that to sort of like promote the film, which I think is so distasteful. And I think kind of
anything for publicity.
But like, you know, I think that is part of why he has that like rebel, like in our minds we can't delineate between like his film character and like the actuality of who he may have been. It's because of like the way it was marketed. Like, see, he died the way like
his character Jim did.
Like, ew, gross. Like, this is a real human who died. So he was driving, as you said, in his Spyder. It was him and another man whose name I wrote down, and then now I cannot find it.
Have it here is Wolf Wuntrick.
Yes. And so they were in it, and allegedly the last thing that James Dean said was, "That car will stop for us." Because what happened is that a car was turning left on the highway that they were on, and because they like overcorrected and were turning left, they collided head on with the car.
Oh yeah.
And James Dean was actually killed on impact, and the other people in the car, they had like obviously injuries and like sustained heavy loss or whatever, but James Dean was the only one that died on impact. Like, he didn't survive. He
got the worst of the accident. It was with the gentleman in the car was Donald Turnip Speed.
Ooh.
I know. Turn up speed.
Oh.
Turn up the speed. What?
No, don't turn it up.
Don't turn it down. Turn it down, Donald.
And so that was the thing, too, is that James Dean had actually already been cited for a speeding ticket that same night because he had been caught going 65 and a 55. Mm-hmm. And so he had, at the time of the crash, been going 55. They, like, in the autopsy and the police report, he had actually, because he'd already been ticketed, so it was even was going the speed limit, because that was again the thing that they were promoting, was this high speed, rebel devil may care, and it's that
it just paralleled with what he was really into, which was racing.
Yeah, and that he was headed up to Salinas,
yeah,
which East of Eden is set in the Salinas Valley. There's all these echoes from that, but he was headed to a car race. So I don't want to make him seem like a completely innocent bystander.
No.
But at the time of the crash, he actually was following the rules and even made note that car won't pull out in front of us, and then obviously the car crashed. So before we move on to the next person, I want to talk about the Spyder, the car itself.
Oh.
Which is the other part. So the one every decade really creeped me out. The car, I think, was legit cursed because it then goes on. So obviously, upon James Dean's death, it sort of does start the cult of James Dean. His apartment in New York is ransacked by fans looking for memorabilia.
Oh my God, yeah.
The set of Giant is ransacked because they built a house, a facade, and that gets broken apart by fans.
Yeah.
It becomes this sort of insatiable need for James Dean memorabilia. The town that he grew up in sort of gets a rush of people. All these mid 50s. I mean, that is in history when the idea of a teenager comes about anyway. Yeah. They have money that prior generations didn't have. They had free time. They had cars. And he sort of melds into that mid 50s, 60s lifestyle. And it's this cult following. So the car is then sold, but then breaks down. And so the next person buys it and they just take the engine out. So now it's starting to be sold for parts. And the engine explodes, killing that car owner. The tires were sold off in auction, and they allegedly all exploded at the same time, killed that car owner. The car is then reassembled or rebuilt, obviously not all the same parts,
but it was reconstructed.
Thank you. Could not think of that word.
Yeah.
And put on display, and they cannot keep the car physically together. It keeps breaking off into 11 pieces of car chunk every time. So they had to essentially weld it together. It's no longer drivable.
No.
Because it physically would not stay together. A, it took the lives of 2 more people, and B, it won't even be displayed.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why that freaks me out so much. As soon as a car starts falling apart in 11 pieces, you just got to sell it for scrap metal.
Well, for a lot of people, it wasn't just the James Dean car. It was also the fact that the Spyder, they only created 90 of these vehicles.
Yes.
So it was a collector's item. It was for people that really were obsessed with cars. And I mean, even if it was part of the car that James Dean, owned and died in. Sure. I mean, people gravitated to it. But yeah, it did cause a lot of chaos and death. Even Rolf Wotrick, who was a part of that accident, who was his co-pilot in the car, he suffers the same fate too. And even though he survived the accident, he never fully recuperated physically from his injuries. And after he returned to Germany, he died. You're not going to believe this. He dies in 1981, the same year as Natalie Wood. Ironically, from a car accident.
No, don't go in cars.
Yeah. So needless to say, like so many others, he probably wished that he never seen or had anything to do with the Spyder, the little bastard as he nicknamed it. And I know that some people like to claim that it was a curse within a curse because it became the James Dean curse.
Yes.
You know, James Dean death was linked to this car that was cursed. It had negative vibes.
Yes.
Even like his girlfriend, who was it? Ursula Andress, felt that the vehicle had a malevolent presence. And another one of his friends even told him that you're going to be dead within a week.
And then he died within a week.
It was Alec Guinness told him that.
That is so creepy. Like,
yeah.
If you get in that, I think he like told him, if you get that car, you'll be dead within a week. And then he literally died 7 days later.
Here it says, I have it stated, James got in it. He would be, and I told him he would be dead within a week. And sure enough, within a week, he died in the car. Yeah.
That is so creepy.
I mean, I honestly believe that car has some really, really bad juju. So what happened to the car?
I think it now is on display.
Mm-hmm.
But they, like I said, they had to weld it all together because it kept falling apart.
Yeah.
And so it's no longer, there's not like an engine in it or anything. It's like not a functioning car. It's just a facade essentially.
And I know like the highway patrol, the California Highway Patrol used that car and sent it to different high schools in California to teach teens the dangers of driving at high speeds. And during like the transportation or in the midst of transporting the wrecked car to other schools, there was a gentleman who was like handling the car and its transportation, and something happened where the car fell off of the bed and it crushed the truck driver.
Girl, at a certain point, just leave it on the side of the road. Like, no, it is clearly not for you.
So I found out that the 550 mysteriously went missing. It eventually goes missing in 1960.
Really?
Yeah.
I missed that
So
part.
I have here an article. It mysteriously goes missing in 1960 while it was being transported from Miami, Florida.
Oh, that's right.
To Los Angeles, California. And since then, many have claimed to know what happened to it, but none of the reports and rumors have materialized until 2005, when the Volvo Auto Museum, located on the outskirts of Chicago, Illinois, publicly offered to buy the car for $1 million. So the museum got its first promising tip when a man called to say that he knows exactly where the car was and is located because he was present when it was stashed away. And if his story is to be believed, the caller was 6 years old when he saw his father and a few men hide the 550 Spyder behind a fake wall in a building in Whatcom County, Washington.
Wow.
Yeah, museum officials say that the story is credible because the man provided details that only an eyewitness would know, but who knows? And then they put him through a polygraph test, and he passed it. So...
But, I mean, that's so hard because, like, he could, if you really believe the lie you're telling, you'll still pass a polygraph.
Exactly.
So they don't have the car still?
They don't know where it is.
Damn.
They don't know where it is. Because, like you said, they took all these parts and it all circulated.
Right.
Okay, well, what happened with the main frame?
Oh, my God.
What happened to what was rebuilt?
That is crazy.
We were all so focused on the stories of like the pieces of the car and how they affected their current owner that we...
Well, and that mirrors so much of like after the accident. Part of the James Dean legend was that like there was a passer or like a pedestrian on the highway, and that was who the body was, and that James Dean was disfigured, and so he like went into hiding, or like he's not dead, or you know he was actually not the driver, and so he like escaped because he couldn't like live with the script. Like all these crazy legends about like he didn't really die. You know, we're sort of Elvis, Marilyn Monroe, so obsessed
They
thinking fake their death. John Lennon, like all these people, like no, they're not really dead, and like they're in hiding. Princess Diana is another one that comes to mind, and it's just like that mythos, and it's sort of echoed with the car of like, well, it's not really gone. Like
I know where they are. Isabella Rossellini's mansion from Death Becomes Her, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
They're in a mansion. And
that was a documentary. Yes,
that was.
It's a beautiful documentary. I love that movie.
Drink the potion of life and
I
live
will.
forever.
They're like, oh no, like this is a lesson about why you shouldn't be immortal. I'm like, I would do it. Girl,
Drink the potion.
Drink the potion. Paint me on. Let's move on to Nicholas Adams.
Girl.
That sweet little Boo Bear. He died he was discovered, his body was discovered on February 7th, 1968. He had dinner with his attorney or had a scheduled, they were supposed to meet, Erwin Roeder, and then he failed to show up, which was very unlike him. And so his attorney drove to his home, and everything was like from the outside looked as if he were home. So his attorney essentially breaks into his house, which, you know, don't do that, but sure. And he is the one who discovers Nick Adams' body. And he was like dressed to go to dinner.
Oh, shit.
And his body was like slumped near a phone. And so there was an autopsy performed, and it was ruled an accidental suicide.
Does it make you go,
Because they found in the autopsy there was formaldehyde in his body, as well as other sedatives and other drugs that you would have to ingest intravenously, and yet there were no needle marks anywhere on his body. And then his attorney was actually an he had worked with the LAPD, and he essentially kind of started putting his affairs in order, right? Like, as your attorney does. And so that, again, this is where it starts getting like, okay, well, maybe he was an accidental suicide. It is odd that there's all these drugs.
Yeah.
We talked about the Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
Like, man, that is a lot of drugs. Like, that person would have passed out before a lethal injection, or like a lethal dose could have been taken orally. So, like, what does that mean? They didn't find any needle marks on the body. There's a lot of formaldehyde is not something that you can acquire by yourself.
Things are not connecting.
Things are not connecting.
The scene of the crime looks too perfect.
Too
perfectly set up.
So his attorney starts collecting all of his things and takes the papers essentially to his own home.
Oh, crap.
As your attorney does. And the next month, he actually is also found dead. Him and his wife were murdered in their driveway of the condo. And then those papers are never found. Whatever those papers' personal effects may have been, we don't know.
They're
because
cursed.
They're cursed.
They're cursed.
Clearly. So now...
Like Adam's legal paperwork cursed.
Yes, and so now it's this thing where, okay, people around the main, if you will, the main root of the curse, quote unquote, are also being affected. So it's like he takes the paperwork, whether or not it's a curse, whether or not someone's now like going after these people because they knew something. It's hard to say.
There's a lot of things that he knew about Elvis Presley and other people that, from what I read, he was ready to go public with.
And then
that was another thing.
Gun down. Yeah, and it was so eerie too that Thomas Noguchi performed the autopsy, and he was the same doctor that performed the autopsy for Marilyn Monroe, John F. Kennedy, and coincidentally Natalie Wood. Oh, gross.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I knew it was the same as John F. Kennedy.
I found out that he's the same one that did Natalie Wood.
Maybe stop hiring him. Illuminati. That's right. I said it. You heard it here first. Breaking news. The Illuminati's real. Credibility? No. It's fine.
Watch, I'm going to get a text message from somebody like, you should go visit Bryce. I go over there. Bryce slumped down against the wall with his Starbucks. Like, Bryce? Starbucks. Do you need me to get you more? How come you're not breathing?
Who put formaldehyde in your Starbucks? Oh, well, it's fine. That one creeped me out. I did not know about Natalie Wood.
Yeah. 6 degrees of separation in this town,
Especially the industry in the 50s. I mean, Elvis was obsessed with Rebel Without a Cause. He, like, allegedly met the director one day and was like quoting the whole movie to him.
Well, that's how him and Adams started a friendship. It's because he knew James Dean very well.
Yes.
Very, very well.
So it's like 6 degrees, 2 degrees, like they were all so interconnected, and being famous back then and now even is still such a small club. So
indeed.
Girl. Let's jump forward to Sal Mineo. On the evening of February 12th in 1976, so now we're in our third decade of murder. He was rehearsing a play. He pulled his car into his apartment and basically was stabbed in the heart and died almost instantly. So he's
it was a brutal murder.
Super, allegedly unprovoked, super graphic and brutal.
Yeah.
Coming home from rehearsal and like kind of trying to, because after Rebel Without a Cause, he had a string of similar roles as like the teenager, like outcast, like weirdo, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And then as he starts getting older, you know, we're now 2 decades out, he is getting less and less work because he can't keep playing these roles. And this play was sort of setting him up. I mean, he was already getting like very early reviews that were pretty positive, and it was sort of setting up to be his comeback, and then he's attacked and murdered. And he dies almost instantly on the spot, and it's ruled just a... Not ruled, but it's just assumed that it's kind of a random coincidence. It was sort of just like a robbery.
Yeah.
They say. And yet, he had all his money, all of his jewelry, all of his car. Nothing is ransacked in his home.
Yeah.
But they call it a robbery and a murder. So fine. Allegedly is the word of our day today. And then we jump forward to our final decade of the 80s. And our sweet Natalie Wood.
I know.
And I would say hers is the second most sort of nefarious and well-known. And obviously James Dean is the domino that starts all of this. But with Natalie Wood, there's so much sort of swirling around that.
Yeah.
And so she is found drowned. And it's initially ruled an accidental drowning. That's like the very basic thing. But it's this whole other issue. She's on a yacht with her then boyfriend.
Yeah.
Whose name I did not put down. Where is my...
Well, she was still married to Robert Wagner.
Thank you, Wagner. I could not think of the name.
It was Christopher Walken,
so
her other co-star.
And so they are on this yacht, and the cause of death is accidental drowning, and yet there's all these circumstances. They supposedly looked for her for hours before they reported to the Coast Guard that she was missing.
Yeah.
She had a deathly fear of the water and would not swim or like be near the water because her mother, who was super controlling in her younger years. Rebel Without a Cause was actually the first role where like Natalie Wood was trying to establish her independence from her mother.
Oh yeah.
Who was like a total typical stage mom. Her mother had visited a psychic when they were very young, and the psychic supposedly told her that one of her children would drown. So her and her sister wouldn't swim because they were so afraid of this like
water,
prediction.
Yeah. Her mom just like it was the mother that just created that fear and instilled it in her and her sister Lana.
Yes. And so it's like, well, okay, she's like, you know, on a yacht in the middle of the ocean. Like, that's kind of odd.
Yeah.
And it's ruled an accidental drowning. The Coast Guard finds her washed up hours later, or hours after even the initial report. And she is only wearing like a nightgown, and they decide that she must have gotten up in the middle of the night to like secure the dinghy, and then like that's how she like fell and drowned. Meanwhile, all these like things, it does sound made up. But then they also like make these notes in the report that she looks incredibly battered. She looks like she had been in a fight. There was alcohol in her system. It's like all these things that they just kind of like throw in the initial report, and they're like, nope, accidental drowning, case closed. And the case remains closed for another 30 years. So Wagner won't comment on it. Christopher Walken barely comments on it.
Yeah.
All these rumors kind of do swirl around it. Like, oh, this is weird. There's like 3 of them on the boat, and it's like the 2 men survive. Like, that seems a little suspect.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can be pinned on them, essentially. And so they kind of get away. Not get away. I shouldn't say that. But they walk away and move forward. In 2011, the case is reopened because eyewitness testimony comes forward that is credible enough, and there is a podcast whose name I will never remember. I
think it's Final Voyage, or...
Yes, that is the one. Oh, God, what would I do without you?
Yeah.
Literally, I would be lost.
I have it right here, because I just subscribed to them too.
Yes, it's like a 12-part series about this, which I think is amazing.
Right. It's Fatal Voyage, The Mysterious Death of Natalie Wood. And yeah, it's like a 12-part series.
And so they do such an incredible job and have eyewitness testimony as episodes of their podcast,
Yeah.
that they get the LAPD to reopen the case. They've done such an amazing job, which just blows my mind. Like, what little warriors for justice. Like, I'm so
Exactly.
proud of them that they, like, got that. And so, allegedly, there is witness testimony that they heard a man and a woman fighting, and that there was sounds of physical violence. Not that they witnessed, but they could hear the thrashing and the thumping. And that they were certain that it was Wagner and Natalie Wood that were arguing.
Well, that is the thing that Dennis Davern, who was the captain of the Spyder, kept on commenting. Like, his story was very consistent. Robert Wagner, inconsistent. He had 3 to 4 different versions of the story that, like, people just kept on questioning and grilling him about, that he finally shut up.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, they're really coming on to me. But Dennis's, in my opinion, Dennis's story is very consistent. It's the same. Him and Natalie Wood were toxic together. There was a lot of tension that night because they went out drinking at a cafe.
Yes.
They were eating dinner. They had a lot to drink. And then there was this unusual attraction. He could tell, like, you know, because they were shooting this film together, her and Christopher Walken.
Yes.
Wagner did not like that. And I think they were opening up a bottle of wine one night, and this was like the night that she drowned, where Robert grabs the bottle and smashes it on the table, and then there's all this chaos. Christopher, just like, I'm not dealing with this, walks into his room, and then Natalie goes into her room, and Robert follows her, closes the door, and is like, I don't know what to do with my hands. What do I do? There's a lot of tension. Oh my God, what do I do? Because Robert has a temper, and it's been documented even on set. Like, he could be a little toxic. And not to mention, too, he was also having an affair, or rumored to be having an affair, with another female co-star of his.
Ugh.
So they were constantly butting heads. I don't know if it was one of those things where Natalie's like, well, if you're going to have one, I'm going to have one too, with Christopher right here. Yeah.
There was also rumors that it was Christopher and Wagner who were fighting for her. They were, like, clashing over, like, her hand and very medieval, apparently. Again, that's like rumors, and it's like hard to tell when there's like yelling and, like you were saying, the chaos of wine shattering. Like, who can say who was making which noises?
But the autopsies told a different story.
Yes, and like I said, they like not sneak all these things in, but there's all these facts in the initial autopsy that just kind of get glossed over. And so the end result is that her death has now been switched from an accidental drowning to I don't remember the exact phrasing, but it's like a drowning with other accidental or other
drowning and other undetermined factors.
Yes. And so,
AKA murder.
AKA
murder.
So that's, again, not a complete like victory, like, oh, we like solved this crime. It just, I think, gives a little bit more wiggle room and a little bit more honor to her memory of, like, it wasn't that she was like drunk and stumbled over the side of the boat, because that kind of, I think, was the initial, like, well, she did this, like, she kind of like made this happen. She shouldn't have been drunk on a boat. And
blame the victim.
Blame the victim. Yeah.
Here we go with victim blaming. It's
which, like, you know, here's the thing. Maybe that is an element. Maybe she was drunk. Maybe she was out in the middle of the night on a boat.
That was something that was ruled in the autopsy. Yes. They found alcohol, but they also found bruises.
Right. And so it's like, I think even though we might not ever know what really happened, it's kind of nice that she's had a little bit of a redemption of, like, she didn't like make a mistake and just slip overboard.
Yeah.
Something else happened, whatever that may be, that led to her death. So I don't know. It's still incredibly tragic.
It is, and it's sad to see like interviews with her sister Lana.
Oh,
Have you seen the recent one that they recorded? Mm-hmm. If you go online, just Google Lana Woods and Robert Wagner. Mm-hmm. She confronts him in front of the camera.
My little waspy heart cannot handle it.
But she tells him, I know you know something. Mm-hmm. You know what happened to Natalie that night. Mm-hmm. You know. And he's like, oh, really? You think I know something? You think I know it? Because in 2008, he writes a memoir, and he wrote that he and Walken had an argument that night. Wood disappeared, and that Walken went to the bed first, and it was a while later, after he had calmed down, that Wagner noticed that Wood and the yacht's dinghy were both missing. But then that story had changed twice or was edited twice
Right.
before.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. In my gut and my feeling, I felt like he was responsible for something.
Mm-hmm.
He was responsible for something. He pushed her. Something happened.
Even if it was still accidental, he still did.
He still
yeah.
was responsible for her drowning.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like maybe she fell off the boat. He tried to save her, or maybe he was like, "No, you're gonna fall off the boat. Maybe you can cool down. I'm gonna teach you a lesson," kind of thing.
Oh God.
Yeah, but the autopsies is what really caught my attention was the fact they were like, why did we look over the fact that she had scratch and bruise marks all over her arms and legs? Why was this looked over? Yeah. See, this deserves a separate episode, guys.
It's just
we'll have it in the
yeah.
future. Trust me. We'll do the true crime and paranormal aftermath of Natalie Woods, because there is like a paranormal aftermath.
Of course.
And of course, this is a true crime. Like her story is
and it really
a true
is,
Holly Weird tale.
We talk about it so much, but there's so many eras
yeah.
in true crime and in Hollywood. And
for
she
sure.
really like manifests in the 80s. It's like that sort of 80s, 90s era of like the O.J. Simpson trial. And, you know, she's kind of all wrapped up in that of like violence against women and mysterious murders and like that sort of very like true crimey, like 90s 80s vibe.
Yeah.
She's definitely like the forerunner of all of that. Her death is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's really sad. Mysterious Circumstances. If guys listen to that podcast. I love Justin and I love like the research and his collaboration with other podcasters. But he did an amazing 2-part series on Natalie Woods. Like he really like you could tell like he was so passionate about this case and about her history and her life and what she went through growing up with her mom, growing up in the industry, and just being married to Robert all the way to her death. He did a really great job. I highly recommend looking for those episodes, Mysterious Circumstances. I had to throw that in because I love that podcast. Hi. Justin's so amazing. All right, so is it that time?
It's that time. Let's talk about ghosts.
Ghosts. All right, guys. So when something tragic happens, a residue is always left behind, an energy, and in this case, they always come back.
Girl.
And let's start in chronological order of passing. So let's start with James Dean. Let's start with James Dean's ghost. I would love to start with his ghost.
Girl, me too.
Okay,
Swoon.
sorry.
I've seen him in that tree. Ooh.
He can haunt me.
Yes.
He can haunt me. I wouldn't mind a haunting by him. I mean, especially right now since it's so hot, I wouldn't mind the cold spots.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I wouldn't mind the
kinda
cold.
nice.
I mean, give me a break from my electricity. Yes, I will invite a haunting.
He's such a giver. What a nice guy.
Wake up in the middle of the night, he's standing in the corner, and be like, whoa, whoa. Oh, yes.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
No.
All right, where do we start? So according to KNDshow.com, many fans would swear that James Dean has returned from the grave. And there have been many reports of spectral Porsche cruising the highway in the area where Dean was killed. And exactly where is that Porsche, Spyder? As we mentioned before, it could be at this museum behind a fake wall in Chicago. Who knows? And what happened to James Dean's body? Someone supposedly stole the corpse from the grave, and more recently his headstone was taken as well, though it was quickly returned. Little wonder that Dean might be disturbed enough to walk the earth again, quite possibly. So I researched, and the report of his corpse being stolen is false. However, Dean's headstone has been vandalized so many times, and it's been stolen, I think, about twice already.
That's so sad.
It's really sad. So according to an article of Washington Post in 1983, visitors to the grave have been chipping away mementos from his tombstone, like you mentioned before, ever since Dean died in 1955. It's a simple granite stone. According to Deputy Brown, nothing any different from anything else out there. But so many people have chipped away at the stone that the name is also difficult to read.
Leave James Dean alone. That's so sad.
People won't. Then it was finally stolen later on that year of 1983 and found 4 years later in a fire. And then,
God.
oh, it gets worse. And then in 1998, the entire headstone is stolen again.
Girl.
According to the Chicago Tribune, the rose-colored granite stone, a few feet long and about 400 pounds, was reported stolen from Park Cemetery in Dean's hometown of Fairmont, 45 miles northeast of Indianapolis. The stolen tombstone has been recovered by an off-duty sheriff's deputy who rammed into it with his car on a lonely Indiana country road.
I mean,
Bryce, is there really nothing to do in Indiana but take James Dean's headstone?
I've made a lot of, exasperatory claims, but I can, without a doubt, say that there is nothing to do in Indiana except for steal James Dean's headstone. That's fact.
Unbelievable. Like, no wonder he walks the earth. No wonder, no one will let him rest.
We're very bored. There's a lot of corn. We cannot help it.
Oh my God. Like, if someone were to steal my headstone, I would be one hell of a salty and sassy ghost.
Love it.
I think for me, personally, I would start off doing the smallest and most annoying things in the beginning. Like, change the passwords to your phone.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Your Wi-Fi and your Amazon Prime account. I'll start doing that, and then I'll move things around. Like, I'll move your car keys into different areas of the room. Possibly leave it in the freezer. Hide the teepee.
No, ghost Tammy.
If you're OCD, your color-coordinated wardrobe will be uncoordinated.
All of your photo frames will be slightly askew.
Then I'll get more aggressive.
Yeah.
Then I will not let you sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good to know.
Good to know? Yeah.
Leave that
How would
headstone
you do?
alone.
How would you haunt?
I want to be cremated, so I don't know. I will make sure your Starbucks order is wrong, I assume. Like, ooh, sorry, that's actually whole milk. Bye.
And they spelled your name wrong. I did that on purpose.
I'm really allergic to dairy. Oops.
Well, many have claimed to see the spirit of Dean on Highway 99, now Highway 5, close to the site of his crash. So passerbys have reported seeing what looks like a phantom car that looks identical to the little bastard driving on the highway with the headlights off. The car would appear out of nowhere and then disappear. Others have reported to see a young man in a white shirt and jeans walking alongside the road, covered in blood, and they believe this to be the spirit of Dean. Psychics have reported feeling his presence at the site of his crash by his memorial. They say it's a residue of his last moments in his life. They feel like a shock to the body, almost a blow. Probably it's like what he felt on impact. Then they get this feeling of anxiety and sadness. There has also been reports of a blue-green mist that can be seen in the distance in the fields as well. Yes.
I don't like mist. This is so weird. Slight interjection. You know what's weird talking about mist and color and parallels is that Jane Mansfield is associated, if you recall the episode, with the pink mist, which was her go-to color.
Oh, yeah.
And the parallels between their car accident are very similar.
Oh, yeah.
Mainly that both of them were rumored to have been decapitated by their car accident. And that was one of the reasons why people thought James Dean wasn't actually dead, is because the rumor was that they couldn't find his head, quote unquote, that he had been decapitated. And so like, that's not him, that's just the body that they it was the bystander or whatever. Both of them were not decapitated, first of all. So that's that mere rumor. But also, before Natalie Wood was cast, Jane Mansfield was on the short list for the studio to play that part.
Really?
Isn't that creepy?
That is insane. No.
It's too close. I know.
That's too eerie.
It's too close.
Too eerie.
And then one of the reasons that the director went with Natalie Wood is because he was kind of trying to he hated the confines of working within the studio system. And that was one of the ways that he kind of fucked them over, was that they wanted Jane Mansfield and he kept shooting screen tests with her and not using film and be sorry, we didn't get it on film, and was delaying the process until he cast Natalie Wood. So how eerie is that?
That's too close to home. That's way too close to home.
You saying mist reminded me of that. Leave the mist alone.
But that's how spirits of the dead tend to project themselves, how they present themselves as mist.
Ugh, gross. I have little chills. I don't like mist. If I see mist, I'm running.
So Nick Adams is the next one. So there's no reports of hauntings or anything unexplainable that have occurred in his house in Beverly Hills. Though it is a stop in one of the the Dearly Departed tours.
Yes.
It's a stop. And his house has been sold to several families, and no one has reported anything out of the ordinary. But we move on to Sal Mineo, and this is where it gets kind of sad.
Aww.
So after the horrific slaying of Mineo, it has been reported by residents of the apartment complex that there was a coldness in that area of the car park, especially at night.
Oof.
There had also been several reports of seeing Sal's restless ghost wandering the lot at night between the hours of 12 and 3 a.m. There you go,
Oh,
shaking
God.
your head.
That is why you need a 10 o'clock bedtime. No.
One tenant claimed to have felt an unusual cold spot in the car park one hot summer night. So the man reported that he was coming home late from a night out around 2 a.m. He mentions that it was a really hot summer night and he couldn't wait to go inside his apartment to, turn up his AC. He parked his car, got out, and out of nowhere, the temperature dropped. He said that it felt like, it was 102 degrees at night, but it just dropped to what felt like the 50s. It just sent this immediate chill down his spine. He immediately locked his car door and rushed up to his apartment.
Damn.
He was so spooked. Other tenants and neighbors next door to the complex would also report hearing what sounds like a young man crying and calling out for help in the middle of the night. When the tenants would get up out of bed to see what all the commotion was about from their window, there would be no one there.
Oh,
nothing.
No.
The tenants would also mention that it sounded like a young man, and it would occur late at night around the same area where Mineo was found dead.
Oh.
There was also one report from a tenant who reported seeing a young man one night wandering around the car park. He said the young man was wandering around outside the area of the car park as if, he was lost. He looked pale and scared. At first, he thought it was a homeless man on drugs, but the man would disappear into thin air. The man matched the description of Mineo to the T. Yeah. So he was renting an apartment off of Holloway Drive in West Hollywood. I lived 3 blocks away from that apartment. When I saw pictures of his apartment, of his old apartment, I'm like, oh my God, I lived 2 blocks away. I lived off of Phyllis Avenue. And I remember always passing by his apartment to go to work.
No.
I can't believe how close to home. How close. So as you guys know, that finally a break in the case came in 1979. A career criminal by the name of Lionel Ray Williams was heard bragging about the murder in the state pen. He was extradited, tried, and convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 51 years. I think it was 51 years to life. He got out in 25, but was soon once again behind bars for armed robbery and parole violations.
Girl.
So he kept on going back into jail. So the ghost of Sal Mineo has not been seen or heard since. And it's believed that since his killer was finally caught and brought to justice, he is now finally at rest.
Oh, I hope so.
I hope so too, because that was a really sad story when I read about it.
Especially hearing the person crying or reliving their final moments. That is heartbreaking.
Well, his last words were, help, help, oh my God, when he was stabbed in the heart. And then he collapsed. He died 5 minutes after the stabbing. Yeah, poor thing. So then that leads us to Natalie Woods, guys.
Yes.
This is crazy. So rumors and suspicions spread around the world of Natalie Wood's death. Many of these rumors included her husband, Robert Wagner, broke her neck and tried to hide her body in the water. Christopher Walken murdered her because she would not leave Robert and continue their affair. There's even an obtuse rumor of involving organized crime and Frank Sinatra.
When in doubt, blame Frank.
But whatever the actual truth may be, Natalie, it would seem, is trying to get her tale told even after that untimely death. Now, according to Brian Clune's book, Hollywood Obscura, he states the first story about the boat, the Splendor. So the Splendor was sold in 1986 to retired flight attendant Ron Nelson, who had dreams of sailing to Hawaii and turning it into a charter yacht for tourists. And in the very first day, he began to notice strange things occurring on the boat. Yeah, no, never one prone to falls. According to Nelson, he would fall and hit the floor out of nowhere. He also states it's like, my feet came out from under me and I fell. He said that the falls occurred when the boat was tied up at the dock, so no motion was never really a factor. Nelson has told of seeing shadows. This is crazy. Nelson has told of seeing shadows out of the corner of his eye, but they are gone when he looks directly into the shadow's direction. He also says it just looks like a woman and that she is simply just staring at him.
Nope.
I felt that in the haunted theaters episode.
Yeah.
I remember like when I was working in that theater, I kept on seeing like this figure of a man.
Yeah.
But every time I would look directly into that direction, it was not there, but I could see it in the corner of my eye.
Oh, I don't like that.
If you could see it and feel it, then it's there. That's just me.
I really don't like a haunted ship. Let's just start there.
I know. It's like, especially if you have motion sickness, you're like, great, now this shit, I got to deal with motion sickness and a ghost.
And you can't get away. Like,
no.
That's the thing with like a haunted house. I always hate, I hate horror films anyways, but I'm like, just go away. Like, don't be in that house. Like, you're not trapped, but on a boat, yes, you are, because there's sharks in the water, and I'm also afraid of sharks. So there you go.
I'm on a boat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God, I hate that.
So Nelson had continued to stay on the boat and put up with the haunting. He just had to, see, like him, he just put up with it.
No.
Right? He was injured twice due to unexpected falls. He kept the boat until 2014 when Hurricane Anna had damaged it, and it was too much for him to repair and handle it. So he put the Spyder up for sale, and it's been placed on auction with a starting bid of $220,000. So far, I cannot find out who purchased it and what happened with it.
We are purchasing it. We will only be podcasting from the Spyder from now on.
Yeah, it was taken off the auction site, it says here, in 2016. And there's also rumors that parts of it were sold in auction. Like
that's so recent.
Yeah, like the name, like the plaque, the Spyder, that was sold in auction. Yeah. But it seems that the residents of Two Harbors have claimed to have seen what appears to be the ghost of Natalie Woods. Numerous reports over the years since her death have people seeing, you're not going to believe this, a mist-like figure of a woman walking along the beach. Yeah. Always in the direction of Two Harbors, it appears that this woman is dressed the same in all the reports. The woman is seen wearing a big red coat and what looks like a long flowing nightgown, and it appears that she's wearing a pair of boots style fur slippers, the exact same identical outfit that Natalie Wood was wearing when they found her body the night that she passed.
That is creepy.
The entity in question looks like she is walking in the direction of the town center, and many claim that they get the feeling of sadness and loss from when you gaze towards her direction. Other reports say that they see this entity appear more often between the months of November and December. And there is one report from a local witness who has stated that the woman just looks lost and confused. She has this scared look on her face. She's completely pale and looks as if she is soaked in water.
No.
Oh yeah. So I want to
No.
So I want to point out this phenomenon. So this is a phenomenon with spirits of the dead or hauntings. And I've read about this in articles that psychics or people who carry the sixth sense have reported seeing ghosts in their post-mortem state. And it's very rare, but they have seen spirits appear to them in the manner that they had passed. For example, people who have died in horrific and gruesome crashes would appear in the afterlife with missing limbs, broken bones, and severe abrasions. It's rare, but there are times when they can come back as what they looked like when they were alive, or moments before their death or after their death.
Right.
Yeah. I remember seeing this, this is a good example in The Sixth Sense. When Haley Joel Osment's character would see these visions of the dead. It's the dead post-mortem. Yeah.
Terrifying.
That one scene with the little kid, he appears in front of Haley. He's like, oh, come here, I want to show you something. He turns around, you see that big bullet hole in the back of his head.
Oh, God.
Yeah. It's very rare for psychics to see that. But for them, they said, yeah, it can happen. There's also a report of seeing what may be Natalie Wood's spirit at the Harbor Breeze restaurant, the last place she ate her final meal before she had passed. Workers claim to see a woman sitting at the same table she sat the hours before her death. The table seems to be empty. She's laughing and talking to unseen companions, and she's usually wearing what is described as casual boat attire. Many believe that this is a simple residual haunting brought on by her first final night of happiness before her death later that evening. So here, in this case, it looks like there's two types of hauntings. There's a residual, and then there's the aftermath. There's probably an intelligent haunting.
Especially with like such a dichotomy or like a huge difference between like the very positive energy at the restaurant and then like the extreme negative energy. Like that schism must create such energetic turmoil. Do you know what I mean? Like, that makes me so sad.
It does. But in Ron's story of the boat, I feel like there is a severe residue there.
Yeah.
He keeps on like falling.
That's so creepy.
So I feel like in connection with her death, she fell.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe something happened. Maybe she was pushed.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Because he would just fall out of nowhere.
That's the thing that's so creepy, too, because I was like, as soon as you said that, I was like, well, maybe he just has, like, no sea legs. And he's like, no, it was tied up.
Yeah, and this is not his first time, sailing.
Right, totally.
He has experience.
Ugh.
Even when the boat was tied up, he would still fall.
That's so creepy.
Yeah. So, who knows? Do you come back in the afterlife if your spirit's not at rest? Like, do you come back?
I don't know. Especially
Especially when your death is under, mysterious circumstances.
And it's like you said when we were talking about Mineo, it seems like he got some closure, or that once his assailant, his murderer, was dealt with and justice was served, that was enough to put his spirit, or to put the residual energy, whatever you want to call it, we always say, that was enough to quell the energy. Whereas these other ones, you look at James Dean,
yes,
and people are bringing so much of their own energy to him, and so much turbulence and disturbance with his headstone. Like, how could, if that is what happens to us, how could someone find rest in that kind of a situation? Whereas Mineo, he's much less well known. He's not as iconic as James Dean was. He's not as perturbed as the James Dean spirit could be. And so it's like that person maybe was able to find peace and rest. And then you see Natalie Wood. We still don't know what happened. There's so many allegations and mystery surrounding her actual death. How could you find rest? How could you be at peace when there's no closure? And, her poor sister, for the good, this isn't a criticism, but is continuing to pursue that as anyone would. How could you not try and find the truth, but there'd be no way to like be at peace while that's happening? So that's just my opinion.
No, I agree.
But it just makes me sad, kind of.
I believe that their souls are not, or were not at rest because someone out there is not telling the truth, or someone out there is not letting them rest in peace. You know what I mean?
I think that's why I would probably gravitate more towards like energy and like resist, because then it's like, well, at least their actual soul, and this is what I believe, is that like, you, once you die, you are in the afterlife. There's no like, maybe there's no like coming back or whatever, except that then like, what does that mean when we can't explain things? And my hope is that it's like, well, the energy maybe manifests so that person isn't still being like in limbo or being tortured or whatever. Like that, I think that's like my very naive hope. Is like, well, they're in the afterlife. They're like living their best life, pun not intended. And the energy that we're seeing is what we bring to the haunting, or what we kind of extract on our own, so that they're not like unrestful. I think that's like a little naive, but that's like my little child hope. Like, oh, I hope they're okay.
No, I think that's healthy.
I hope so.
I think so. I feel like it is.
Natalie Wood is just like leaning over my shoulder. She's like, it's not that. Oh, girl, no. Why? Why am I so wet?
No wonder I felt so cool.
Yeah.
I was like, did you have the AC on? No.
Good, because I am sweaty.
Well, guys, that is episode 18. The casting curse of Rebel Without a Cause. Do you think, let's end it here, like, do you think there was a curse with this film?
I think that is a good question, Tammy. I don't know. I think not as aggressive maybe as what we saw with the Misfits, because the Misfits was so quick and their deaths were so rapid fire.
Yeah.
And so similar and so traumatic. It is incredibly creepy to me that it's one a decade. The thing that I would say is a strong counter argument to it being a curse is that they all died in sort of different and seemingly unrelated ways. To me, it seems like maybe more likely that someone was trying to cover something up.
Yeah.
And that it kind of looks like a curse. If you listen to our episode talking about the Misfits and that casting curse, the death pall was sort of over that entire production, and there were so many things leading up to that people were like, they're like walking corpses. Everyone was very concerned, especially for Marilyn Monroe, that she was sort of losing it. And so I think that part of the curse maybe manifested more tangibly than this one. But yeah, it's pretty coincidental if it's not a curse, I think.
Like I said before in the casting curse of the Misfits too, I feel like a lot of these people led very turbulent lives and they were just hellishly unlucky. I don't think it was a casting curse, because it just seems like there's a story in Hollywood and, you know, the story goes, you're famous one day and then you're dead the next.
Totally.
You know? And for a lot of these individuals, and I even brought this up too on our Instagram, Paul Walker, for example,
Yes.
how history kind of repeats itself and how eerily his death parallels with James Dean. Because with Paul Walker, he passed away in a car accident, speeding in a Porsche Carrera, and he was in the midst of shooting, I think it was the 7th installment of Fast and the Furious, and he passed, I think it was in 2013.
Wow, I can't believe it's been that long.
It's been that long. He passed in 2013, and it's just how it miraculously parallels with Dean's
so
life
many
too.
aspects of it. I mean, there's always been rumors about his sexuality and his
There's another
relationship
one.
with Vin Diesel and his relationship with his mother, and like all of these things that are very paralleled, and just how tragic it was. And I mean, I actually really don't care that much about the Fast and the Furious franchise, and I still was super affected by Paul Walker's death. I felt so heartbroken, and
because he's a part of our generation
100%.
and we grew up watching him in all these movies.
Yes.
Yeah. But I just felt that he's wonderful talents were in a direction in their life where it was just in the direction of all this turbulence.
Yeah, I mean, that's very common, especially when you look at like how the industry was. I know we bring it up all the time, but like the industry attracted a certain kind of person in the 50s and the 60s. Especially you look at like all those old stars and starlets and big diva names and big acting names. Like they all were very specific kind of neurotic, needed love. Like that story of like their parents died very young and they spent the rest of their life looking for love and admiration and affirmation. That's very common. It's this sort of very tiny club of people. The similarities are very present.
Agreed. I know.
Don't be a film star in the 50s. That's the moral of this story.
Drive the speed limit, please.
Yeah. Yes.
Hands at 10 and 2 o'clock.
Yes, please.
Yes. All right, guys. So that is episode 18. We were so excited to do this episode. And don't worry, we will do a separate episode dedicated to Dean Woods and Mineo separately. Yes. We just wanted to let you all know that we adore the hell out of you guys.
Yes, you guys
Thank
are the
you for
best.
following us on our social media and for leaving those reviews on our iTunes. They really help us out a lot. We just have a couple of shout outs this week that we gotta give out.
Yes.
So Tammy Lynn, Jess Lockmees, I think I pronounced your last name correctly. Caitlin Johnson, we sent your Myrtles postcards out this past
they're so
week.
Cute.
I know Tammy got hers. Yay, Caitlin girl. Let us know if you got yours, because this was our first time sending something to New Zealand. New Zealand, Bryce.
Yes.
We are heard in New Zealand. Thank
We
God.
are hobbits. Yes.
Shout out to LaToya at the Hollywood Post Office for assisting
Yeah,
me in this
girl.
process.
She's the best.
She looked at me as I approached her window and she said, "Oh Lord, Are you shipping out another Ouija board?
Yes.
It's like, nope, just these haunted postcards. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for hooking me up with these scratch and sniff stamps.
Oh, girl, they smell so good.
God, they smell amazing. All right, so before we head to our spiritual base of the week, we have to give a special happy birthday shout out to a ride or die listener, Corey Dooley. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast.
Yes.
We hope you have an amazing day. Happy birthday. Eat lots of cake.
I'm sending you a haunted cake. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Bye. And that leads us to our spiritual bays of the week, guys. We have to give a shout out to Dead in Hollywood zine.
Yes.
Dead in Hollywood is a true crime zine documenting strange and tragic Hollywood deaths, created by Los Angeles artist Castor Berger. The name zine comes from the abbreviation of punk era fanzines, itself a corruption of magazine, which itself dates from post-war Hollywood.
Love.
So Castor Berger is an amazing and talented artist, and if you like reading and learning more about the dead famous, then you'll love his zines and his blog. Stalk him at Dead in Hollywood Zine on Instagram and read his blog at deadinhollywood.com. We reposted their images on our Instagram to help promote his zines for this episode, and we thank him for letting us use those images
So
and
cool.
for helping us out. We hope to do an episode with him
Yeah.
because I love his work. Go check him out. Just
Yeah,
go,
it's
guys,
super
go.
cool.
The second is The Paranormal Chicks. So Paranormal Chicks is a podcast that is the brainchild of two BFFs, Donna and Carrie, and their weird obsessions with things that go bump in the night and real life monsters who live all around us. So each episode consists of one paranormal story and one true crime story.
Love.
Who doesn't love murder and mystery mixed together,
Love,
of
love, love.
course? Grab a drink, pull the sheets over your head, and get ready to feel like you're with your besties at a slumber party with these two ghouls. Tune into their podcast each Monday to catch their episodes, y'all. That's the thing. They're two Southern girls.
You know I love a Southern Belle.
Oh, yes. They're two awesome Southern gals, y'all.
Ha.
So if you love Hollyweird Paranormal, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes. It really does help us indie podcasters out a lot. It helps us become a little more visible.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Can't get enough of Hollyweird Paranormal? Then stalk us on Instagram and Facebook at Hollyweird Paranormal and Twitter at HWP Podcast. Have a story that you're dying to share, no pun intended? Then email us at hollyweirdparanormal@gmail.com. Catch up with our episodes on Blueberry, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, Castbox, Player FM, and now Spotify.
We're everywhere.
We're on Spotify now, Bryce.
Girl. It's so weird.
It's so weird. Like, one day I woke up and there we were.
There
On
we
Spotify.
were.
Like, they didn't even send me an email. I'm like, okay.
Thank you.
Till next time, guys. Bryce, do you have anything you want to say?
Don't get haunted.
Bye.
Bye.